Next week, world leaders and their entourages will converge on New York City for the annual UN General Assembly. I sat down at the UN on Thursday with Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Mr. Secretary, let me ask you about the other war, Russia-Ukraine. The problem, it seems to me, you face as Secretary General of the United Nations is that a permanent member of the Security Council, Russia, has violated one of the core principles of the United Nations, which is no aggression, respect for sovereignty. What do you do in a situation like that?
Well, I have not the power to stop it, but we had from the first moment a very clear position. This is a violation of the Charter, this is a violation of international law, this is a violation of the territorial integrity of the Ukraine, and for us, we need peace, we need to stop this war, but we need peace that is just. And peace that is just is peace that respects the UN Charter, peace that respects international law, and peace that respects the territorial integrity of Ukraine in its internationally recognized borders. And that is our position of principle. Of course, there is no negotiation for peace. I don't think any of the sides is now interested in a direct negotiation for peace. I don't see a role that we can play, but we can be clear in the affirmation of the principles that must be followed. Because the day territorial integrity is forgotten, and the day this is becoming a bargaining tool, that day will create an enormous potential of instability in the whole world.
But Mr. Secretary, it does seem as though it's very unlikely that Ukraine will regain all the territory that it has lost, that it will regain Crimea. It is likely that at some point there will be negotiations, and then there will be a compromise, and unfortunately it will be a compromise of those principles, because I don't think Russia is going to give up every last square inch. That does set a precedent for, which has not really happened since World War II.
That might happen, but not with our support.
You will never support.
I consider that the territorial integrity must be respected. Of course, countries are free to establish whatever they decide in relation to their future, but the role of the UN is to affirm the principles of international law that everybody must respect. The rule of law is a central principle for each society and for the global society.
Do you get the sense you have communications with the Russians? Are they really interested in negotiating at this point?
I don't think so.
And the Ukrainians?
I also do not think so.
So this is a dire situation.
I think that both are still betting on the possibility of a military victory. President Zelensky has announced that he has a victory plan to present in the United States, and I think the Russians have clearly indicated that they also have victory as a military objective.
So when you look at these two crises, it feels like this is one of the darkest chapters of the United Nations history, because in both cases they are ongoing. In both cases the UN has not been able to be much use.
Well, it's first of all of the darkest chapters of the world, and obviously it is for us an enormous frustration. But it's a frustration that has a lot to do with what we have in today's global governance. The institutions that are relevant in global governance, the UN Security Council, the Bretton Woods institutions, and several others, we could go on and on in the different areas of governance that exist in the world, were created after the Second World War, with a logic that corresponded to the power relations at that time, the global economy at that time, and obviously 80 years afterwards, they are totally outdated and unfair and ineffective in answering the challenges, the enormous challenges that our great-grandfathers could not have imagined.
But here's the problem, which is to reform them, the very countries that are in power have to vote themselves into lesser positions, themselves
That
into...
is true in relation to the Security Council.
Right.
But I must tell you, when I came to this function, the reform of the Security Council was a taboo. Nobody would accept that to be discussed. And even the committee that exists in General Assembly, they couldn't produce written texts on it. Now, everybody accepts that the reform of the Security Council is a must. Might be difficult to get, but everybody accepts it's a must. And we had recently a meeting in which all members, including the permanent 5, said they were ready to accept an African permanent member of the Security Council, which shows that things are changing, which shows that people are gaining conscience that with climate change wreaking havoc all over the world, with artificial intelligence without effective guardrails, and with the potential of becoming also another existential threat, with this multiplication of conflicts everywhere, many of them going on and on, with the total impunity that exists in the world, where everybody thinks that they can do whatever they want and nothing happens to them. In these circumstances, it's clear the institutions, the global institutions we have, need to be adapted to respond to those challenges. We cannot accept that this chaotic situation of the world is a new normal with which we have to live. We need to fight to change it, and to fight to change it, we need to reform the instruments of governance that were created 8 years ago.
On that slender note of hope, I will thank you, Secretary General, for joining us.
It's a pleasure always to discuss with you.